Joining us now, economist, public affairs analyst Kunle Olomofe, to tell us more about this, or more or less give us your perspective. Thanks a lot, Mr. Olomofe. How do you assess this claim now? It's rather a nice sum, indeed.
Yes, it's a generous sum. It's not nearly as generous as it should be, because Nigeria is a fairly rich country. So when you're talking about 5.2 trillion, it's not that much, but it's a very good first start. It's an excellent first start, in fact. Starting from 2015, when the president put this, into law, basically made this compulsory implementation. If you recall, this was actually not something that Buhari came up with himself. It was actually a Jonathan government concept, but they didn't have the political will to actually implement it. So the president comes on board, makes sure that's one of the first things he does, and they start really well. I think by the end of 2015, they had gathered about 2.2 trillion naira, which was a very good start. And now we have about 5.2 trillion naira, which is an excellent figure. But as I say, it's not nearly enough. There are still agencies in the government that have not come on board. There are people outside of this, TSA that are still functioning. And the finance minister is, addressed, Nigerians and talked about the fact that they're working on following up with these people, and their banks that are still outstanding have accounts that are still outstanding. There's money still out there.
Well,
there's money still out there.
It's nice that you described it as a very generous sum.
Yes.
It's a whopping $16.4 billion.
Yes,
should the federal government still be asking for loans from the World Bank?
It's a very good question. Now, here's the thing. You see, misinformation is a big problem that we have in Nigeria. Actually, I would call it a lack of proper information management. That's what I would call it. The truth of the matter is, even that $16.4 billion is not actually what is in the accounts as we speak. It's money going in that was told.
Exactly.
Money going out hasn't been told to you.
Okay.
So you don't actually know what's there. You don't, and then naturally this money is going to different agencies in Nigeria. They have to have money to spend. So there has to be a proper information management system set up where when you talk about inflows, you also talk about outflows, and you talk about agencies to which those outflows go. So the question like what you asked would be easily answered. You can see if the 16.4 billion was generated or 5.2 trillion naira was generated. You can see that 4.6 trillion naira has gone out to these different agencies. You can see that the balance might not be enough to tackle the budget. Then you understand when the government says, look, we still need a little bit of extra money. And then they have the support of the populace. But right now, they don't give enough information. They seem to give it in little tidbits. And then people get riled up. And then they say to people, why are you riled up? We're handling the problem. And then people say, well, we don't think so. And then it keeps on going over and over. So the problem the Nigerian government has is a mismanagement of information.
So with this question that you have just raised now, and with the hint that the Accountants General of the Federation is saying that perhaps this sum of money might just be, targeted at key areas of this year's budget, so to speak. Now, how then would you advise the government now to go about this now? Where should they pump this money to? By the time, of course, they considered what's left.
Exactly. Well, like I was saying to a colleague of mine, I was on my way here. You think about the national account like a business account or like a family account. It is never a good idea to spend your money to the last naira. You should always have something in savings for a rainy day. But you might have projects that are a bit larger than what you can afford to do at the moment that you want to implement. The problem with the Nigerian government, and it's not only the Nigerian government, I have to make this very clear, the problem with governments around the world is that they never have enough money in the coffers to handle the projects they want to handle. So they always have to borrow money. The challenge is this: you can't run an economy on borrowing. You have to figure out a way to raise money from within that economy. If you have a 6 trillion naira budget, you should have an economy that can generate 12 trillion naira. It's possible, but there's for lack of a better word, laziness when it comes to public economics, public management of economics public funds management rather. There's a laziness in there. They look, we want to build bridges, we want to build roads. What's the fastest way to do that? Go borrow more money. And they borrow more money, and then somebody else has to pay it back. But that person comes in, it's his time, he goes, okay, let's put this aside for now. We need new roads, he borrows more money. So the solution to this problem is the first step that they took, which was to bring all of those accounts together, Now they have to manage how those funds go out, and then they have to come up with an economic plan that generates funds, not go borrowing, not go running to the World Bank and borrowing more money.
Well, talking about mismanagement of information,
Yes.
we've heard about all the recovered, looted funds.
Yes.
Where do those go into? The TSA or where?
That's a very good question. The answer is nobody knows. And you see, the TSA was created for transparency purposes.
Exactly.
The question that I ask Nigerians is, does this look transparent enough to you? It's a good start. We must, always give credit where it is due. They have done really well. But they should have done better by now. We're almost 2 years into this government's tenure. And we're still talking about looted funds. Nobody knows where it's going. If I were to ask the average Nigerian on the street, or if I were to ask you, who actually has the final say on the TSA? Nobody knows. Who has the final signature? Nobody knows. Is it the president? Is it the finance minister? So then you ask the question, is that really transparent? You have to have people who are held accountable. And once people are not being held accountable, there is no transparency.
Even in the TSA.
Even in the
TSA.
All right, Kunle Olomofe, thanks a lot for your perspective now on the policy now, the promulgated policy, so to speak, of the TSA here in Nigeria.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
You're watching TVC News Hour. We will be back after this break with more. Stay with us.